Hello and welcome to the Wild West podcast. I am Richie Richey of the MHRT Network. Over to my right here is the real Alex Givens of Arrowhead Addict and the Lightning Fast Fantasy Podcast. You guys got to cut those syllables out. It's going to mess me up every time. Which comes out directly after this show on the Lockdown Defense channel and on a mystery channel that is yet to be created because Alex just won't create one. And we have Captain Jack Rackham. You can catch him almost every day on his channel. All social media, almost exclusively all the same names. And Coach, I dropped in to see you and Kurt last night. I made a point to make sure I did not miss 2 weeks in a row. Great show. And this is Coach Defense. You can catch him on the Lockdown Defense podcast. Right up the top. Yeah, just read. Okay.
Hey, he does it without Vanna. Man, that's awesome.
Well, he is Vanna.
What?
Okay, no.
Hold on. No.
Yeah. Whoa.
What we're not going to do is compare me to Vanna White. That's what we're not going to do. We're not going to do that.
It's 2023. We can compare anyone to anyone these days.
Oh, we can? Okay. All right. Then remember that. Let's keep the same energy when it comes back to you. That's all I'm saying. That's
not what I'm saying,
man.
Keep the same energy. That's all I'm saying. We want to be all inclusive. Let's be all inclusive. All right. Let's do it.
Yeah. So we have a great audience here already dumping in questions and all that good stuff. I just want to point out we have Ref Guru here of NFL Nation Live in the chat here. Captain, obviously a co-host of yours on NFL Nation Live, which is a great show. It's got Captain Jack and Ref Guru. For those of you who don't know who Ref Guru is, he is a former NFL ref, has a ton of knowledge. And one thing that kind of sets him apart, if you watch the show, is some of the guard that was around when he was reffing have now started to retire and move on, but he has a great knowledge and depth in terms of the different crews and whatnot in the NFL and what you typically see when they're reffing versus when they're not. So it's a super, super interesting show to watch, to get an additional insight into the game of football, because as we all know, a bad call here and there or whatever can truly impact the game. So having that additional insight is a wonderful thing. Ref, I'm not going to speak out of turn here because all of our tweets are public. But Ref and I were kind of volleying back and forth on the no-call pass interference on Marvin Mims in the Broncos game. And one of my big things was, yes, it was pass interference that wasn't called, but my other issue with it, which was not called, which was the defender's hand kind of pulled his helmet and kind of like jerked his head back. And my whole point is that if you're going to start focusing on head and head injuries and neck injuries and that kind of stuff, then that in and of itself should actually be something that's called on the field, because you can actually cause a tremendous amount of damage when you start snapping guys' heads back with the helmet itself, because the guy can't control that head motion backwards, and you can actually cause injuries that way as well. So that was kind of my point that I've been making there on Twitter when I've been volleying back and forth with not only Ref but others as well. So it's if player safety and the safety of the game is in fact truly a paramount interest of the NFL, then I think those sorts of things should actually be factored into decisions as well. So with that in mind, we're going to start off the Week 13 recap with the only one of us that won, and that is Coach. That's your.
Hey, we didn't lose. Let's be technical. We didn't lose.
You're correct, but you also did not win either.
There you go. So it should be the people who won, the people who didn't lose, and then the people who lost.
Is that the order we're going in? Is that what we're doing?
That's fine.
You know what? I'm feeling good today. I'll go last.
Well, it's okay. Captain, I will make sure that we circle in the order that was the aforementioned order that you just mentioned there. and we'll go in that we'll go in that direction here on the panel. So, Coach, let's kick things off. Let's kick things off with your the whopping victory, a victory nonetheless, but the whopping victory that you had over the Patriots.
Right. Real quick, Cap, that's Amy Trask's book behind you, right?
Yes, it is.
Have you read it?
No, I have not.
Oh, okay. That's actually how it was. Because I like Amy.
I have read excerpts. I see, because I don't want to lie. Because if you said read it, that would be like from front to back,
cover, right,
cover to cover. And I have not, but I have read excerpts of it because Amy is a very good friend of the NFL Nation Live crew and has come on the show. And the operative, there you go. Even Ref knows it's a great book.
Yeah.
What I have read was some really, really great things.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pick that up. I just want to ask that quick question since I saw it on the spot. I was like, I want to know if you saw it or not.
Asylum said the doll said it's a good book.
The doll said.
You're making me break things. Damn it!
That's my fault. Okay, yeah.
Read the book. Do not break shit on your
on the way to getting it.
On the way to getting it. There you go. You Negotiate Like a Girl by Amy Trask. Great stuff.
Thank you,
Vanna could have done it a lot better without breaking shit. But if we're also going to go be doing books,
yeah, you know Vanna. Vanna. You like Fana.
You also read The Walk by my buddy Wayne Mabry, aka Violet. So there you go. There's your book.
I started reading that actually.
There you go.
I'm about like a chapter or so into that book there. So I have started reading that. That's a super interesting book actually.
Yeah. If you haven't noticed, we're going to start a book club in the off season.
We're
starting a book club.
We're going to have tea under the tree and discuss our books.
There you go. Right, Alex.
So Amy won't be pissed at me, like I said. What?
Right. Yeah. She listen. She's very active on Twitter, so she would know. She'd know if you bashed her. The word gets around.
And Amy, like I said, this book is still ready for you to sign, personalize.
Nice. Yeah, and she's out. So yeah, if you probably can catch her at a game or something. So yeah, I definitely would do that if I can get that.
I want to see her. She will. Yeah, I just need to know where she's at, so I'll bring the book. Or I'd have to buy a new one. I can do that too.
She does a show out in LA, I believe. So she's out in LA a lot. So just FYI. So if you had a game in LA, you might be able to catch her then.
I don't go to LA because that's where the
yeah. You still go out there on occasion. Don't act like that.
I haven't been there for a while though.
But you do go though. Don't act like you're banned from California now. Let's not do that.
Oh, like when I fly into the state.
Well, yeah.
When I fly to the state, that there are people that meet me at the ramp. And say, you can't come here.
Well,
they might.
Yeah.
Hey, we're looking for the pirate. Where's the pirate?
Yeah. Right, Ref. Yeah, she's on with a Rich Eisen network. I've seen her on Rich Eisen network on What the Football Podcast. It's really good. Really good.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm sorry. We're Coach and I normally we're bickering at each other, but we're actually doing public service announcements. But I'm gonna shut up. Coach.
You having too much fun?
I am having too much fun.
He just wanted to avoid the 6-0 win he had. So he's like,
it's not much to say.
What's in the background?
I'm filling time. It's not much to say when you win 6-0.
He took the card. That's what I was going to do when we got to the Chiefs game. I was like, what's that? I can't talk about the book now, so now I got to
find something else to talk about.
Hey, is that a picture behind you? Did you take that?
You want to talk about my license?
What's that tag back there? What's that Florida tag say?
Raiders rule. There you go, see?
Don't break it.
You know what? Hey, Coach,
you guys thought this was a week.
I got to
Don't break it, Fana.
This will take a lot of time. See, Raiders rule.
Come on, Fana.
You thought this was a week 12 recap? No.
Raiders right here. Baby. And then there's Raiders K, right? Raiders J.
There you go.
There's another Raiders J because I just couldn't have one.
Right.
Then you got Raiders rule again. Dude, that took at least 30 to 45 seconds, man. We're awesome.
There you go. We're filling space. We're good.
All right. So let's start with the first field goal.
Football.
Right.
So it went
man.
to the uprights.
Yes, yeah, it did. An oblong shape made a pigskin, went through a big H. That's what happened. That's what happened. It was good. 3-0. Yeah, it was good. 3-0. In rainy New England, it was an ugly game. And then again, I must admit, much as I got chastised the Sith Lord of the Empire, Bill Belichick, right? I definitely give him credit for always having a unique scheme that will constantly give Justin Herbert trouble. It's been like that since he's been in the league. There's one coach that he has trouble with is Bill Belichick's scheming against him. Doesn't help typically when your pass protection is wonky on top of that, and it's rainy and people continue to draw passes. But we're not going to sit here and keep making excuses. You still have to play the game, right? It's funny that you say we're the only team that won this week. Ironically, I'm the one. I was hoping going into we're the only team that lost, and because at this point we're just hurting draft position. I mean, it's not like we're fighting for.
You're like, yeah, damn it.
Yeah, I'm not even like, yeah. Let's just tactfully tank at this point. Let's just tactfully tank and get a high draft pick. That's what I'm for. That's a train I'm on. I haven't got off the train yet personally, but our particular position, is rough, and we got a tough schedule leading into the rest of the season. We got the Raiders again, we got the Broncos twice, we got the Chiefs, got a bunch of divisional games, so they got the Bills mixed in there too. So yeah, it's gonna be rough. But again, I think that it's going to be it's best for us just to not hurt our draft position and not hurt our players. That's the biggest thing.
So you're saying, so what I heard was it's best for us to lose. That's exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Without saying it, respectfully,
I'm saying
it.
Yeah, I think you pretty explicitly said it.
I'm not dodging it at all. I think I said it very eloquently. I think I eloquently laid it out. I eloquently laid it out. Did his best to. I'm tactfully tanking. That's my word of the moment. Tactfully tanking. Be competitive. Put on a good show. Right. But you're not in the realm of trying to win games at this point.
So be competitive. Play a good game, but in the very end, you do counter Al Davis. Just don't win, baby.
There you go.
Go
there you
hard.
Go. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Play hard.
Then go home.
But just not at the end.
Go home with a loss. I mean, hey, if it's good enough for the Cardinals and the Bears and the Patriots, it's good enough for us. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. So I'm looking for a top 10 pick at this point. But
tactfully tanking.
Yeah. That's my word of the day. Tactfully tanking.
Little TT, baby.
Yeah, little TT. So, and again, it wasn't much to talk about the game. I mean, Bill Belichick put on a clinic as far as defense is concerned. The elements helped it. The fact that we couldn't put the ball in the end zone at any point, although we were in the red zone several times, was an issue. Now their particular brand of football and their offense is just completely and utterly horrid at this point. Like it's rough. It's a rough watch. It really is a rough watch. I'm almost mad that I literally was locked into that game and I watching the whole entirety of football that was going on around me. But that's typically how it happens. I watch our game in its entirety, then I go back and watch replays in red zone after our game is over. So 1:00 had me locked in, and I watched. It was a rough 3 hours to watch a 6-0 game. Let's just put it that way. Still can't run the ball, which is and the conditions were primed to run the ball, and we just couldn't get it done. And I think Ramondre Stevens getting hurt saved our bacon because they couldn't run the ball after he went out. So that's it. And in the positive note, I will say that I love the fact that Tuiyopu and Khalil Mack are having career years. They're definitely out here holding down the edges, getting after the passer. Khalil is leading the league in sacks. It's great to see them, play well in the midst of all the turmoil. I'm sorry.
Man, if you take those 6 sacks that he had out on that career day, would he still be leading the league in sacks?
No, but I mean, you take 6 sacks away from
but
anybody.
You got 6 to 1. Yeah, I mean,
right. You still got 6 in one game. You can't sully that.
Okay, but what I'm saying is he's leading the league by how many sacks?
1.
There you go. So if he wasn't quite as good, maybe if he only had 4 sacks.
If and buts were candy and nuts, we all have a Merry Christmas, okay? But he's leading the league in sacks. I don't give a damn if he got 6 sacks against y'all or Joe Burrow's mama. It doesn't matter. He got 6
He's
sacks.
still got
in one
15
game.
on the year. So
It's not an easy feat to get 1 sack. So having 6 in one game is remarkable.
If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a wonderful Christmas. I just love that. I love that. Yeah.
Or if was the 5th, we all be drunk. How about that? So, but yeah, again, he's leading the league in sacks at the moment. So it's nice to see that he's having a good year. He's been consistent. He's probably been the most consistent defensive player we've had in the last 2 years. And the fact that he's been on the field, he's been productive, he's been solid, he's been everything that we thought a second round pick would generate for us. And when we got him, 2.5 years ago. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of what Thule's doing. I'm hopeful that they can figure out a way to not stymie or I guess you can say regress or belittle his career. Just want to keep building and developing on his talent. So they definitely struck gold on that second round pick as well. Our cornerbacks are a mess. They're gonna have to address that in the offseason as well. But so I mean, the bright spots are the fact that Justin Herbert's still upright. He's still playing solid ball. The fact that the edge rushers are playing well. And, our defense is, because the Patriots' offense is really bad, I can't really say they looked amazing, but they did get a shutout. So, take it with a grain of salt. Yeah, it's take it with a grain of salt. I'm not going to sit here and give it credit because, again, we're going to play better teams and better offenses going forward. And we're going to see exactly right back to status quo, how good or bad we are defensively. So, overall, I mean, a win is a win, I guess. But, again, I much rather have had another L in the column to help our draft position at this point. I mean, if you're gonna fumble early, don't try to play solid late to hurt your draft position. That's just crazy to me.
I want one more crack at my shipmate here. Okay, that win that the Raiders had against the Packers is looking a lot stronger now, isn't it?
Well, the Packers are playing well right now. But But you told me that the Packers team wasn't that good. And I told you the team was good. It was a good team.
I said that the Raiders were a better team than the Packers, and you looked at me cross-eyed and like I needed to go to the mental hospital.
Now, if they played right now, it might be a different story. Let's be real about it. If the Raiders and the Packers play right now, that might be a different story.
You play your schedule.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. That's fine. But again, how you playing in the moment is different. Like, y'all, we won against y'all early, but we likely will lose to y'all later on in the season because we're not playing the level of football that we were playing earlier on in the season.
And I am saying that. I said that if we play the way we are ascending right now, I would say that we're going to give the Chiefs a decent tussle on Christmas if we can figure out how to keep a lead, against them, which is kind of hard to do. And I think that we will play y'all a lot better because I'll be at that game. I'm going to Vegas. I'm going to Vegas for a week. Come by and see me.
Those last 4 divisional games for us are going to be tough. They're all going to be tough. I have no. But
I tell you what, playing the Broncos that last game of the season, they might actually finally beat the Las Vegas Raiders.
That might get flexed.
It might.
That might get flexed, actually. Yeah.
Depending on the implications, it might.
That might be a flexi.
It might. Yeah. And one last point before we move on, that I do want to give a shout out to Keenan Allen too. He's been a serious and well-rounded wide receiver and a cog for our offense. Probably the only bright spot in the offense that's been great this year and consistent. People have given them the injury tag and saying he's this and that, but the man over 10,000 yards at this point. I think he leading the league in catches at this point. He's been balling and he's been that true number one receiver that we've been able to rely on when he's healthy and upright for the last 8-9 years, I believe now 10 years. So yeah, shout out to Keenan Allen, shout out to Justin Herbert, Thule and Khalil Mack, but everybody else, boy, we need work. And I'll leave it at that.
The problem is that he is the option.
I know that's the problem because every time you look at somebody else, it's either a drop or something. Yeah,
it's the option, right? And so, I think to your point, you made a comment about Flowers in the game prior, not this past week, but the week before. And you look at how he had a few nice plays there in that game.
A few?
Yeah.
He plays like
I think he had all the touchdowns.
I think he all the touchdowns.
Yeah.
Right. Well, he was the guy. Yeah.
Well, actually, and part of you has to start wondering if that was done on purpose, right? Like, was that just
listen. Let's be honest. Would you do that? Look, if
Yes.
you knew, exactly.
Yes.
So if you knew that they
Yes.
they passed on this guy and they blessed you with his talent, you're going to utilize him and feature him in that game to prove to you that you made a mistake.
And you know that internally himself, he wants to do that.
Absolutely. You pass. It's Amon St. Brown syndrome. I'm gonna check off everybody that passed on me in the draft, and he checked us off.
Well, and I know that this is Captain's and others, least favorite person, but Tom Brady was the same way.
Yeah.
Tom Brady
I would say he's the pioneer of that. He's the pioneer of that, or checking off all the quarterbacks that were drafted ahead of him. Yeah.
Who? Never heard of him.
Sure, yeah, right.
Hey, you know another QB by the name of Josh Rosen said the same thing too.
Yeah. Good luck with that. Where is he at again? Where is he playing?
I think he sells car insurance.
Chosen Rosen,
real estate.
Yeah, real estate.
Hey, that's
commercial
not
real
fair.
estate.
Well, that's not fair. He actually does commercials for Taco Bell. I think he's the guy that's in the commercial with Devontae Adams in his house.
Is he really?
No, I'm just throwing it
Oh,
out.
okay, I was going to say. Whoa, that's a rough downward spiral there.
From grace.
It's the Rosen Way real estate team.
Good one, Rich.
Yeah.
Good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a way.
While you guys are
Rosen
talking,
Way.
I will actually do a Google search to see if I can find something out about it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll do.
So, Coach, at the end of the day, it was a win, but certainly not something that you're going to be pointing to for everyone to watch after the fact. Really
I'm not jumping for joy in that regard.
No,
I'm just not. I'm just not.
All right,
and everybody pointed to that was the one game that we could really win. Like they pretty much penciled that in as OW. Everything else is TBD. So go figure.
Yeah. And so Captain, I did promise that we would go to you after and your Raiders game to talk about it.
I'm ready.
Wait for a second.
I'm ready.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to now talk about the Broncos. That was the 1 second because your game is over because it never happened.
We didn't lose.
We didn't lose. Over to you, Rich.
Yeah, exactly.
Back to you.
Back to you, Rich.
All right.
So we're going to go on to my Broncos, who had at least it was an interesting game. And there was a few horrible things in that game for the Broncos. For those of you who are fans of the show, watch us regularly. You will note that every time the Broncos have won, I have kind of been very hesitant in saying, I'm really happy or I'm really pleased or I very much think that this is going to be the game that the Broncos are going to, completely kind of come out of their shell and actually do what we all thought and hoped they would. My comment has always been, yeah, but wait till they can't force turnovers on the other team. And I was mistaken in some regards, I suppose, that was going to be our new MO. That our defense, that was just their thing, is that they kind of worked on enough things in the the week prior in the prep game where they were seeking weaknesses, if you will, in terms of certain players or certain plays or certain styles, and that they were simply working to exploit them in order to get turnovers. Clearly not the case against the Texans. They did force one turnover that ended up getting picked up by the Texans. So I guess, credit there where credit is due. But we just didn't see that multi-turnover game that we've seen in weeks past. Our corners, if they had a potential turnover, they weren't able to come up with it. They weren't able to actually catch it or whatever the case may be. The one turnover we caused on the kind of the fumble piece there, we weren't able to recover it. And in addition to that, we got passed on a lot. Like, it was bad. We got a lot of our corners and a lot of our safeties, and frankly, a good portion of the way that we were attempting to bolster the run defense got exposed. And that was a big takeaway for me. A really, really big takeaway for me from that game. And you're not going to win games when you turn the ball over 3 times, your quarterback has to stop throwing the ball to their team. It's really not hard. They don't wear orange. I just don't understand. And
he's colorblind.
And well, there's that maybe. Who knows? But just it's the little things that we just did not do well in that game whatsoever. The one thing I will say is getting back to reffing and other things of that nature in this game. Russ took a shot to the head when he was sliding. It was like a blatant late shot right to the head when he was sliding. He also took a sack where the guy kind of did the one-arm body slam with him to the turf and landed on top of him. At some point, the NFL simply needs to say, we're a contact sport or we are not. Because you can't call those types of plays on some teams and some guys and not on other teams and other guys. Pick one. It's getting absolutely ridiculous, and it's no wonder why you're hearing guys like Justin Simmons in pressers and other NFL defensive players coming out of the woodwork and actually speaking out publicly on, what is it exactly that you're wanting us to do? That is the general message that they're all saying, is that if you don't want us doing what we're doing now, then give us an alternative. Otherwise, shut up. And I agree. I could not agree more. That is an unfair position to put these defenders in, because you're calling the same thing on one guy and not on 5 others. And you're trying to claim that this is all for player safety. Is it really, though? Because you're letting 5 plays go and only calling 1. So, again, I just think it's an absolute just dog's breakfast out there in terms of how things are being called. And I don't even necessarily blame it exclusively on the refs. In fact,
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
I think they've made it too subjective.
That's the problem, right? Is you got one dude in one stadium that's kind of been told that he has the ability to kind of figure it out, and then the other guy has the same kind of free will, if you will, in the game to kind of figure it out. Well, they're 2 different dudes. You're going to then interpret the rules slightly differently, or what is good and what is bad differently, when if the NFL is trying to actually cut out certain types of plays by finding these dudes afterwards, then do it.
I just want to put it out there. I just want to make people understand what segment we were in, because we don't have an intro video yet. We have to talk to Mad Dog about the intro video, but I just want to let everybody know we are on this segment called Richie's Rants. I'm just letting everybody know.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to help out.
You're in the twilight zone.
Yeah. It's
rough.
You have all of these different players that are all treated differently depending on what name is on the back of their jersey. And like some guys can get away with certain things, and you have some quarterbacks that get calls even if they get sneezed on the wrong way. Even
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady would be an example of that. Exactly. Yes. And you have other quarterbacks that are treated as completely untouchable. And then on the flip side, you look at what happened with that other quarterback. And Coach, I know you said the dude had blood and all that other stuff, but I'm sorry, just because the idiot can't fall properly isn't my problem.
I disagree with that. He got hit in his mouth with a helmet because that's why he was bloody. That has nothing to do with him falling. He got hit in the head. He got hit in his head with a helmet, and that's why he was bleeding.
The guy led with his arms. It's impossible.
Just because you lead with your arm doesn't mean you can't use your helmet in a hit. That's not how it works.
No, but your arms are extended out. Like you have like easily like 14, 15 inches.
I know his head got contacted with a helmet. Is why he was bleeding, from my perspective.
Okay. I'll rewatch that.
He drew first blood.
Well, okay.
It's over.
Because that hit and the hit that was Browning that did that hit on DCR, right? That hit in the Justin Simmons hit with Luke Musgrave, where he contacted his helmet as well with his helmet. Those 2 penalties I agree with. They should have gotten flagged and was possibly ejected. But outside of that, I do understand your frustration and share it with pretty much everybody in the league that the particular calls and how they're officiated is really based upon the people, which shouldn't be it. Like it should be across the board the same way, and it should be officiated the same way across the board. And no matter who the player is, no matter who he is, no matter what type of mystique he has, they should be officiated properly and equally across the board. And which it was more frustrating because I listened to Dean Blandino talk on Rich Eisen's show a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yep.
And he explained what the referees go through week to week in order to prepare for games. They watch film. They go over rules. They go over tendencies. They go over practically everything. They prepare like coaches prepare and teams prepare for games. So that makes it even more egregious.
But then I feel like you're kind of watching for stuff then too, you know, and then like
you're right. It almost
you get to a point where you're like, oh, that kind of looks like what he did on film. Flag.
Prime example. Let's use Juwan Taylor for example, Alex. Right. Yeah. So after that first week, everybody was ranting and raving about his false starting. Right. So clearly they were literally watching the filming and drilling in on that idea, and they called penalties glowingly and egregiously against him in the very next game.
Oh, dude,
so
he's
that
got like 30
process,
on the year.
Yeah, but that particular process is literally leaning to the idea of what's happening here. But again, to your point, Richie, it should be equally officiated across the board. The rules are the rules. It shouldn't be based upon who has tendencies to hold, who has tendencies to be dirty, who has tendencies, to slide improperly, all this type of stuff. It should not hold weight. It should be officiated equally across the board, and it's not. And that's the frustrating part about people in their teams, because you feel like you're getting screwed in certain aspects and it's costing you games.
Right. Here's the point, ultimately. If the rule of the law, if you will, in the league is leading with your helmet, and the guy does not lead with his helmet, then it should not be called as if he did in fact lead with his helmet when he did not, and the tape is clear as day. Right? And I'm using that in Baron Browning's case. When you lead with your hands and your hands are the first thing that touch the opposing player, even though there may be incidental helmet contact, you do not call a penalty stating that he led with his helmet, because that is just false. Now, I agree with you that I believe it was the Simmons hit. Simmons loves to do this whole arm by his side, Ray Lewis type like shoulder check thing.
Yeah, he has the inability to launch himself. Like he needs to stop launching himself and just stay on his feet and tackle. That's his issue.
Correct. And he's actually learned a little bit of that from Kareem Jackson due to that old school style of play. And I've said this on this show, so this is not a new comment from me here, is help yourself not get the call from the refs. You have an arm, a hand, two of them actually. I know it's crazy. Put one of them out wrapping partially around the guy that you're trying to tackle, and at least make it look like you're not trying to body check him. Right? Like at least make it look like you're fake tackling him, so then the refs have nothing to actually pin on you to try to say that you're actually just trying to lead with your shoulder. Because when you try to lead with your shoulder, you run the risk that the side or even this kind of top part of your helmet incidentally contacts the player first. But when you lead with your arm out, where your arm and hand kind of hit and graze the player first, it is a very difficult stance for a ref to take that you've done the thing. It just is. I'm sorry. It is. And that's my issue with the Baron Browning penalty there. And then on the flip side, when it comes to Russell Wilson getting, suplexed on the field and then the dude landing on him, is that's a penalty for every other player in almost any other week. And yet somehow that's totally cool. And especially as a Broncos fan, when we just got Browning with the penalty for what I just felt was a push and then an incidental helmet contact, we then don't get the same type of penalty in the very next game after you call that as a negative play against our defense. To me, it's just a wild inconsistency, and you need to help the players help themselves, and you need to help the players make the game safer. And right now, the league is doing neither.
Right. I actually listened to Cam Newton talk about it as well. They felt like mobile quarterbacks are penalized more so than non-mobile quarterbacks. It's the reason why they don't get the flags and the calls that they should. Because again, if you're a statue standing there, you get hit. It looks worse than if you're a runner. Yeah. So they've had an issue with officiating that for a while. But on top of that fact that like you said, you have I guess you can say a referee's mentality of you being a runner and how to officiate that versus you being a quarterback. It's a dicey game, because again, once you become a runner, you have to switch on the idea of how you officiate them versus protect them as a quarterback and standing in the pocket. Like once they need a pocket, then they're a runner. Then all of a sudden you have to flip on the switch and say, hey, treat him as a runner and officiate it as being a runner versus officiate him as a quarterback. So that part gets dicey too. So that's where the inconsistencies come in at that as well.
Right, and that's why the other hit on the Browns quarterback was not an actual roughing call, even though they called, I think, a penalty on one of them. He got hit really, really hard, and rightfully so. The dude deserved it. They handed the ball off to him. You don't want your quarterback to get hit like a running back, then don't have him line up in the running back position on the play, and then it won't happen. Sorry, but not sorry. Right? And so that's kind of the whole point here in terms of these rules, is that if the quarterback like Cam Newton decides to turn himself into a running back, then, dude, you have taken on that risk. Shut up.
It's so weird in officiating quarterbacks, period. Like when they become runners, especially when the dual threat quarterback is the wave now, because you can be in the pocket, you're protected as a quarterback, right? You escape the pocket, you're a runner. But you still, as a quarterback, have the ability to slide and give yourself up like a quarterback. So then you have to go back to the officiating that aspect of it, whether they're
and then you got the deep knowing they're runners and like not going to be able to hold up when they slide the last minute.
Exactly.
So it's
It's a rough ass.
Or if a Green Bay Packer hits a quarterback in the fourth quarter, I can't.
Of course. It had to be you to bring that up, right? Had to be
well,
you.
am I right?
Segue into it.
Great segue.
Kermit was inbounds at the stick, was hit inbounds. Not, and he didn't even he popped and came off 15 effing yards. Bullshit. And thank you for the segue.
Listen, if you're not following Cap Jack on Instagram, please do, because you have to see him rant about this in real time. Because I see it in real time, and I just laugh my ass off because I'm just like, this dude here, he is on one. You hear me? What games are going on Sunday? Look! Put your notifications on for Cap and Jack's Instagram. I'm just telling you, it's a nice watch. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, it was easier Sunday because the Raiders didn't.
We're off, right? You're off.
Yeah.
You have to go
tailgate. I would love to be entertaining every time I can, but I'm watching. I tell you what. Thank you, Coach. Thank you for that. I do appreciate it. The next two games, I will probably not be as entertaining because I will be at the next two games. Now, on Christmas Day and in Indianapolis, I am currently not scheduled to go. So I will try to be entertaining on Christmas Day and try to be entertaining when the Raiders go to Indianapolis. And, Coach, thank you for that. I appreciate that. So set your Instagrams anyway, because I try to be entertaining. Thank you, sir. I like that.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
On that note,
share the wealth.
Yeah. So, Coach, on that note, that's exactly the problem with what's going on with the rules today. And I think Captain really highlighted this as well, is the incentive is for a quarterback like Mahomes, like Josh Allen, like these other somewhat mobile quarterbacks to run with the ball a little bit by the sidelines, almost hesitate, and then they basically draw a penalty, or they kind of continue going for an extra 4 or 5 yards because the defenders are so scared that they're going to get called for like a major penalty on what is a totally legal hit. Like, again, it's all crap. I'm sorry, it's all crap.
Yeah. I agree with that. I just think,
There's no way you can't not agree with that. Like, it's absolute crap.
I have not said anything about anything yet, so you don't know my opinion. I did not agree that should have been called. In fact, me and Coach talked about it in real time, and I said, I'll say this: before they slow-moed it, the optics of it did look bad in real time, but at the same time, like looking at it, I don't know how they. I mean, I get because it's Mahomes and it's on the sideline and it's close enough, that's why the flag was thrown. And I mean, he was very obviously heading for out of bounds and not trying to bust a 40-yard run. So I think that's where I think that is what the ref assessed to throw the flag. Do I think the flag should have been thrown? No. Do I agree with the call? No. Am I going to complain about the call happening? Probably not.
No.
But then, karma, as they say, comes in full circle. If you watch that game later, there was a pretty blatant defensive pass interference that was not called.
And Alice can attest to that. That was my response. I said that was the makeup call for that PI, that personal foul call. That was the makeup call. Because clearly, he climbed Valdez-Scantlin's back. We can argue that.
Those two equal out, but the defensive pass interference on the last play doesn't. So it should have been a flag there. No, I'm kidding, but kind of.
You know what? We're in agreement for all of those calls, and I said them all. I said them all.
The problem, I think, is like I'm paraphrasing a bit, but I mean the problem is obviously the NFL wants to promote or initiate plans or protocols, whatever, to promote safety more so towards the quarterbacks. Because I mean, look at how they're flexing games and all this stuff. Like no one wants to go watch Jake Browning versus CJ Beathard, right? But that's what we get.
That was a pretty good game. It was a pretty good game.
Probably the worst of examples to pick there, but you get my point.
I would say Bailey Zappi versus Zach Wilson. That's a good one.
But the problem with it is there's no. At least from what I can see with just how inconsistent calls are. Like you were just talking about Russ. Like if that situation happened to Mahomes, for sure would have been a flag. They probably would think about kicking the guy out or putting him in prison. But there doesn't seem to be any uniform rule. It's like here's your rule, but there's no sub factors to it to tell you what makes this rule our rule. It's just protect the quarterback at the line of script or all these running or sliding, any of this stuff, but every ref looks at it differently, and then looks at it even more differently when you got different, perennial MVP versus Bailey Zappi or, some guy that just signed off the street. So there's clearly no uniformity or I'd say totally hashed out definitions of what these violations should be, which then leads to, these very crucial moments in games towards the end of games when they're close, and you get these bad calls, and then that's where you're leaving the game just talking about that,
Correct.
So I'm glad Ref said that. Because Cap writes about this all the time about how certain crews.
Because even the ref I think it was Brad Allen, I think was the head guy, but he talked about all these penalties, and he's like, he fell on the sword. Like no ref's gonna sit there unless it was, blatantly terrible, walk back on what they called. But I mean, he very clearly talked, they all have these very ambiguous terms to fall back on. So he's like, the sideline, that qualified as unnecessary roughness. Like the ref was adamant he made the right call. And I was like, so that's the measurement? You just ask the ref that was there if he feels confident, and then you're like, all right, F it,
We're good.
Have y'all seen the video?
And then the PI, he's like, that guy was pretty confident there was no obstruction to lead to interference. And I was like, how? I mean, that's just the.
This is my favorite video of all time. Have y'all seen the video of the referee in college to say personal foul number 67 White?
Giving them the business.
That's it, Cap. That's
it. Yes. And I made sure. I said, hey,
I got to find
I give him props, but he was 12 years late in saying Ben Drive. And I know ref will get me on this one. Ben Drive was the originator of that 12 years prior.
Oh man, that was hilarious.
I got it right
giving
here.
them the business. Just give him the business. Just Google that.
That's right.
Just Google that.
But if you want to get the original, because I like I said, for all referees out there, and I love that call. I said, well, how recent was it? But Ben Drive, 12 years prior to the guy calling it against was it like South Carolina, or one of the Carolina teams was in there. Against the Jets, it was Marty Lyons and Joe Klecko and the New York Sack Exchange. Ben Drive gave a flag on Marty Lyons for giving him the business. and I loved it all. So I made sure that Ben,
That is
being the historian that I am, being a historian I am, to make sure you get Ben Dryce in there as the first one to do
giving them the business. That was the greatest referee call I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
that's all I'm gonna say about it. But yeah, that was good stuff. That was good stuff. Now,
real quick, one more
point, Rich. I want to make that I want to kind of get everybody's a yes or no on is that do we feel like, because I think Kurt and I did a video on this about 3 weeks ago about how the officiating and the protection of quarterbacks has not worked. Because if you look at, we've had an enormous amount of injuries for quarterbacks.
Yes,
and all these rules that blanketed to the fact that I want to protect the quarterback and wrap in bubble wrap and save them from being off the field has not worked. Has not worked in an embarrassing fashion. And then going back to the roughing the passer upticks and hitting below the knees and them sliding
and scoring's down too. So it's like part of the argument was that we're doing this to promote offense and get more viewerships with 55 to 50 games, right? And scoring is league-wide down this year.
Exactly.
Like, is that a coincidence? No. There
you go. Over to you, Rich. I'm sorry.
Two things, and I'm sorry. I tried to segue. I was going to. I wanted to get this in there. I say, make sure that I said make sure that you watch the NFL Nation live show. Because not German 3. This is 3. That's what got it. That's what got him shot.
That's what got the guy killed in Inglourious Bastard.
Exactly, Inglourious Bastard. Michael Fassbender was supposed to do the German 3, but he did the English 3, and that's what got him outed as a spy. I picked up on as soon as it happened. I said he just outed himself. Anyway. Be sure to watch NFL Nation Live for your team and get the report on who the ref is and the crew, because he will tell you how bad you're going to get screwed if you ask.
Shepherds, I know it's going to be bad.
Like I said, if you get Jerome Boulder, if you get John Hussey.
I'm glad Tony Corrente retired because I couldn't stand Tony Corrente. He called oh my God, he called the most holding penalties in that whole entire league on everybody. Like everybody, if you got Tony Corrente as your ref, you're guaranteed to get the holding penalties.
You at least
five or more a game on both sides. It was just ridiculous.
Number 99, baby, 99.
So, Coach, you asked a question that I didn't actually hear anyone directly answer. So,
yeah. I do agree with you.
So
I agree.
So yes, I agree. However, I actually have a reason why I believe it's occurring. And this was actually a great segue into what I was going to say before you actually ask your question, because it's actually one and the same thing.
Okay.
What are your incentives with the rules? So I think the fake pirate Tom Brady.
Fake pirate.
Catch, I thought you'd like that with your team. You're welcome. Right at the park, right? So Tom Brady.
He's not our owner yet.
So
where's Steve the Pirate? Where's Steve the Pirate?
There's a guy on our team named Steve the Pirate.
Yeah. So Coach, like I was saying there, what are the incentives now with the current rule structure? Well, quarterbacks don't actually need to pay attention as much as they once did because the rules so heavily favor the offense that they don't need to read the field as well as they used to.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So no offense to some of these new quarterbacks out there, but a Josh Allen would have been laughed out of the league back in the day because he doesn't pay close enough attention to the defense and how the scheme is and all that kind of stuff. That's why he's constantly still throwing these interceptions. He's got all the talent in the world, but he would never survive in like the Elway, even Manning eras and Brady eras or Big Ben eras, because those guys all had to actually process and learn the game on the other side of the ball at a level that these newer quarterbacks just simply don't need to because the rules do not force them to. Like they just don't. And Alex, I hate to kind of throw shade over to your quarterback, but Mahomes is kind of making some errors this year that kind of lend directly into, as talented as the dude is, and he is, you can tell that he's not processing the same way as the other top tier quarterbacks that have come before him have. He's making errors.
I don't know about that. I think the error is probably more due to personnel and people he's thrown to.
And that may be part of it as well, right? But the point is the rules will help dictate and guide the players to either do things or not do things. And so as a quarterback, you don't need to worry about your wide receiver getting absolutely just blown up in the middle of the field. Then you're going to start chucking the ball all over the place and not care where and how it's placed, because you know that all the rules are in your favor for that type of play. Similarly, the quarterbacks, why are they all getting hurt? Because all the rules basically tell the defenders that they have to lay them down on a pillow. But what does that do? It means the quarterbacks are not being careful, they're not being cautious, and they're not paying attention. And when you don't pay attention in a contact sport, you're liable to get hurt, and that's what's happening. And lastly, again, completely in the same lane here, so I'm staying consistent, but nothing else. These quarterbacks are capitalizing on the current rules as it pertains to the hits near the sideline, like the Mahomes one. I'm sorry, but it's true. Call a duck a duck.
That's a lot of that going on, period. A lot of people.
I'm not gonna. Yeah,
right.
They just quarterbacks. The wide receivers, the running backs are leaning into it. There's a lot of offensive players leaning into the rule changes and making them work to their advantage glowingly. And again, that goes back to that point. Scoring is, you're leaning into these rules and the scoring is down, so it's clearly not working either. But that's a whole other conversation another day.
Yeah. No, and I think that's because these players are not protecting themselves. So what are you seeing as a result of this new incentive structure that they put in place? You're seeing the offensive players not protect themselves and getting themselves hurt. Right? Look at how many offensive players are getting injured because they're not trying to protect themselves.
They don't have to.
They don't have to.
You're putting the onus on the defender to protect the offensive player. Tom Brady's been saying this for the last 2 years. You're literally putting the onus on your opponent to protect you. Which, I mean, let's be honest.
And then you got
when you're left up to your enemy to protect you, how comfortable should you feel? I don't feel comfortable. Me personally, I'm going to protect my own self. I'm going to worry about me. I'm not going to worry about them trying to protect me and lay me down on the pillow. Like, so your real points, Richie. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to get down. I'm going to protect myself, my arms, my legs, my head, and I'm going to catch the ball and do what I can and get down.
Dude, as your opponent, I'm going to say there's a pillow behind you, kick it out, and then throw you to the ground.
Right. I mean, that's what you should expect. That's your op. That's not your friend. It's your opposition. You should expect that.
I know.
You should expect that.
I know. So anyways, this is really the whole point of it all, is when you put in rules that put in a certain incentive structure into the game of football, don't be surprised when players try to game the system in the favor when those rules are put in place.
That is a fact.
I think that's pretty much, that's it, right? Yeah.
That's the cherry on the top of the conversation right there.
Yeah, I agree. Alex, real quick over to you, and let's move on to week 14, and we'll go through the breakdown and the rundown.
Yeah. If you can't tell, Chiefs lost. And there we go.
We're on to Cincinnati.
Yeah. I mean,
no smug, baby. No smug on that. That was.
No. I present myself today with humility. But I mean, outside of the bad officiating at the end that I was going to discuss, so I do thank you guys for segueing into that. But I kind of tell by everyone else's topics that we were going to get there
at some point, right?
I mean, just kind of saw again, the Chiefs offense, the big primetime game, stalling out, when they did not need to stall out. And I think the last couple weeks, we at least saw the offense put a little bit more production out there in terms of points, not get goose-egged in any half, or look like a totally different team. But then you kind of saw them revert a little bit back to that in this game. And I think what really came out, hats off to the Packers. Obviously, Jordan Love played a hell of a game. I mean, I think with the throws he was making and the performance he had, I think probably put a little bit of peace of mind in the Green Bay front office. Was like, holy hell, we might have got a third one, guys. Because I mean, he was 267 yards and 3 touchdowns. Packers, I think, won their 3rd straight game. So, you saw a team that was ascending and getting hot, and had a perfect game plan and executed it, zealously out there. Meanwhile, the Chiefs, similar to the Raiders game, got down 14-3 pretty quick, and then kind of had to crawl back and never had a lead. So never even got back to that moment. And you could kind of tell the inconsistencies / lack of trust with the receivers, certainly created problems with the flow of the offense as the game got more into crunch time. The biggest, literally the last 2 drives, Mahomes missed Scantling when he was wide open in between 2 defenders. But I think part of that was he felt he had to loft the ball a little bit more because Brick Hands wouldn't have caught fastball coming in. So
I love that movie, by the way.
And then, 4th down, or then the next play, Richie James falls on the route. So saw that. That was the second to last drive. Then they go out and he throws a pick where Sky Moore, who knows what the hell he was supposed to do, but whatever he did on his route was definitely not what Mahomes thought he was going to do. But in any event, ended up in an interception. That you just saw the KC offense sputter out and, not really have a reliable option to go to, outside of Kelsey, who's, even though he doesn't look like it when you watch a game, still like on pace to do the same exact stats he does every year. But I feel like what's different between Chiefs teams or offenses the last couple of years versus now is I think Kelsey, the age of Kelsey is starting to come a little more prevalent, whereas you get in these later situations and it's not as easy to just go to him, 5 times down the field and get your field goal. And then couple that with, Rice is the best receiver, but he's a rookie. And it's hard to trust him in those moments. And then everyone else is just there. So, offensive woes continue to happen, on top of, some pretty crucial injuries. With the defense, Drew Tranquil took a friggin' knee to the dome, like first play of the game.
Yeah, it was
so
nasty.
The Chiefs defense was without not 1 green dot guy with Bolton, but 2 with Tranquil going down. So it's tough to, people were kind of talking about, I know I mentioned last week, they hadn't given up more than 24 points in the game. They go out and give 27 up. But, it's tough to keep the same defensive eliteness when the guys making your adjustments, making your calls, changing what you're doing, both of them are not out there. So, I expected to see a step back in the defense. I did not anticipate, them not being able to really stop Green Bay's game plan, at any point of the game. So, I think it was a little bit out of character game for the defense. Offense, unfortunately, have to admit that was pretty much on par with how they've played for the most part of this year. It's just statistically a way worse offense than what we've seen in KC. This is kind of this next game coming up, I'd say, is the really make or break for where the season goes for the Chiefs. But yeah, all around, just not a good game as a Chiefs fan. There was some level of excitement at times, but the end of it really just ended in a very sour way. So yeah, I think they got to figure stuff out on the offense, or they got to change some sort of approach with how they're doing things. And I think I know I said a few weeks ago, but I think it's even more prevalent is the Chiefs really miss Eric Bieniemy, and that quote unquote bad cop to Reed's good cop. Reed's very much a hey man, you do you, man. I'm gonna let you express yourself. Just go execute my offense. And Matt Nagy's kind of the same type of guy, whereas EB was like, you F that up. Why did you F that up? You know, and I think this offense is kind of missing someone like that. And I think, you know, Bieniemy probably brought a different perspective to the table in making the game plan more than people realize. And you're seeing that now with Reed and a bunch of yes men. You know, they're like, hey, I know what we could do. Let's just throw 45 bubbles a game. That should get our guys right. And let's do it. And then, you know, so I think that's kind of the biggest, you know, a big thing with the offense is, you know, they just really need to change their approach. I mean, just change the way they're attacking stuff. Like, because even in their good offensive outings, I think they've scored more than 30 points once. And I mean, this is a Chiefs team that you're like, hell, it used to have to score over 30 just to be in the consideration to win.
Yeah.
like, and now it's just, you know, no, like, but that is what it is. But I do think that they need to drastically change, you know, how their passing attack or just how they set up, you know, what they plan to do with how the teams are covering them, because it doesn't ever seem to kind of snowball into anything like, oh, now they're rolling. It's like you see a little bit of magic on one play and you're like, hopefully they could do 2 drives like that. And then, you know, stall out, then it comes back when they need to. But yeah, I mean, hats off to the Packers. They're certainly getting hot at the right time. I mean, I think they're probably going to win the NFC North and be a playoff team. But yeah, like I said, this next game against the Bills is kind of the make or break a game, I'd say, for the Chiefs, if they're going to be a Super Bowl consideration or, you know, a first round burnout in the playoffs.
So let's hear your take on the Bills game, Alex. Roll right into Week 14 here and look ahead, because I agree with you. I think this is a teeter-totter game of sorts for the Chiefs. Yeah. Whether or not they kind of push past what has traditionally been a good team and is kind of struggling a little bit now in the Bills, or whether or not KC is the make-right game almost for the Bills, where the Bills kind of come back and kind of return to form. So this will be an interesting one. What are your thoughts?
I actually have a question for you, Alex, as you go into this. Do you believe that the Chiefs are better off of buys and losses versus coming off consecutive wins? Because I feel that Andy Reid is really good after losses and buys.
That is you need to get out of here, man, because that's exactly what I thought. No, I was going to say I would feel worse about this game if the Chiefs just, you know, steamrolled or beat the Packers, because I feel like there would be a sense of complacency heading into this. Whereas, you know, obviously these Bills-Chiefs matchups in the recent years have been high-flying fireworks. I mean, the game last year came down to the touchdown by Dawson Knox in the final minute, and then, you know, one before that, they literally changed the whole overtime rules because of how that game ended. So, you know, they've always been close games in this Mahomes-Allen era. I will say, as Richie said, you know, Bills are 6-6, so they're obviously in a worse situation than they thought. But at the same time, you know, that is all on the shoulders of Josh Allen turning the ball over. Because when you go look at statistically across the board, they are way up there in offensive production. I mean, not bad. I mean, higher than middle of the pack in terms of defense. You'd see that and you'd think this team has to have 10 wins right now, and they don't. And I mean, that is because of Josh Allen, as Richie said, you know, not reading defenses and just throwing it to guys. And the other colored jerseys are running with the ball like this, you know, like he's
reckless, man. Josh Allen is reckless.
So, I mean, yeah, it's like, I mean, the teams are evenly matched, I'd say, with how Casey's defense has been versus how Buffalo's offense has been, you know, like I'd say it's a pretty good matchup in that regard. I don't know which Chiefs offense will show up, but I do know that the Bills defense is not as good as it's been in past years. And Reed has always seemed to cook up a good game plan to, you know, move the ball in these games. So, you know, it definitely matches up good, you know, 2 of the league's best on the big stage. You know, that being said, the biggest thing for me, as I just somewhat preface in this game, is going to be turnovers. I mean, it is literally going to boil down to the turnover battle, in my opinion. One, because the Chiefs have only had 2 games this whole year where they haven't turned the ball over. That was Minnesota and the Raiders this last week. Outside of that, they've had a turnover in every game. When they have more than one, they lose. So, they literally, and I haven't gone back and fine-tooth combed through this, but I bet if I went back the last 3 years, there's probably games where they had multiple. Actually, I know there has been games where they've had multiple turnovers and still won. So, that has not been an issue in the past. Yeah, literally last year against Denver, I think Mahomes.
You had a 3 turnover game against Denver, and you still friggin' won.
Yeah. So,
okay? So just there you go. You're welcome.
It's not been a problem in the past, whereas this year, they can't afford to make those mistakes, and I know that's a very John Madden-esque way of pointing out the obvious. But in this game, with playing Josh Allen, who is more likely than not, I mean, they literally have an over-under you can bet on if he will throw an interception or not, rather than scoring a touchdown.
That's a damn shame.
Like literally, that's how turnover-prone this dude is. You can bet on it,
Right.
So, with going into this game, knowing who you're playing, knowing that they're going to put points up, you have to wait.
It's not that you can bet on it. It's that you can bet on it, and it's on the first page of the betting line.
Yeah, it's
like that's like you can bet on anything in Vegas.
Lock it in now.
Yeah, you can bet on anything in Vegas. The problem is with Josh Allen, the turnover thing is literally on the first 5 or first 6.
Yeah. So, that's like, yeah, I mean, both of these teams turn the ball over at an aggressive rate. They're both tied for 4th most in the league. So, whereas with the Bills, it's just one person. With the Chiefs, it's a little bit of Mahomes and some, who's fumbling. But either way, I mean, both of these teams fumble prone on offense. Bills are tied for 2nd on defense with the most takeaways. Chiefs are 23rd. But I mean, that's literally what it's going to boil down to. I mean, you have the 2 offenses that are 4th most prone to turn the ball over. You need to let Buffalo be the ones to turn it over more. And honestly, like if there's more than one turnover on Chiefs side, I think that probably called game right there with just how games have gone. And Buffalo is obviously going to be hyped up. Just as talking about, I know I mentioned Reed undefeated on a bye. Well, Sean McDermott is also undefeated out of bye weeks. So, I mean, you have the Bills who aren't where they thought they would be and just got to sit on a bye and think about the Chiefs, which, it's been their Super Bowl the last 3 years. So, it's going to be a big game. But yeah, I mean, you have to let Josh Allen be the one to lose it. You can't let it come down to, you making a mistake and having to crawl back in the final minute, because then it's just they're not the team to be able to do that this year. Maybe they prove me wrong. That happens, sure. But that, to me, is the biggest key. The second biggest key in this, it has to be a huge offensive line game. For how good they are ranked, as of late, they've given up a lot more pressure. Against Green Bay alone, Mahomes took 3 sacks and had 7 QB hits. And I know I mentioned before that game that Green Bay got a bunch of turnovers off of just pressure. And you could tell, there was times where they grossly sputtered out because Mahomes couldn't even get one step into the pocket to leak out. He tried to do get his magic rolling and he was stopped right there. So, they have to figure out a way to help the tackles. Face it, I have to, the proof's in the pudding, so to speak. And both these tackles are not, they're not high caliber offensive tackles right now. One's certainly being paid that way, but he's good when he doesn't get a penalty, which is like every other play. And then Donovan Smith just hasn't been the consistent rental you thought you would get for 1 year. So, they have to find ways to chip or, slide to someone's side. Like, they got to find ways to not get these guys isolated in man-on-man situations and then lead to these holding penalties and and other things that are just killing drives. So, I mean, definitely the two biggest things there, offensive line, but I mean, offensive line really has to step up. Buffalo's tied for third with 41 sacks on the year and fifth with 80 QB hits. So they know how to get after the QB, and you know the offensive line's just got to play way better than they have in these past couple games. Specifically talking about the Packers, but yeah, those are the two biggest ones, I'd say. And then, you know, Chris Jones, he's been somewhat pedestrian. So, I mean, dude's got 7 sacks on the 7.5, but I feel like these last few games, he's been rather quiet, you know, in big moments when he normally makes a key stop or, you know, gets a sack or kind of puts the nail in the coffin, so to speak, on the other team's gaining momentum or keeping it. I mean, as a matter of fact, in the Packers game, you saw him miss on Jordan Love, where that Chris Jones last year was wrapping them up, and that was a sack. So, you know, gotta have him. He's mostly going to be lined up against Cyrus Torrance, Gator guy, but is a rookie. So you would hope that you know, he tests the rookie a little bit, and you know, they make it to where their rookie right guard's got to have the game of his life, for Chris Jones is in the backfield. You know, because Josh Allen, as of late, which is even wilder when you think about it, with his turnovers, does not get pressured all that much. So he's just doing that on his own. So, you know, they gotta get back there. Chris Jones especially has to really eat up the middle, and that's the weakest point of that offensive line. So he's got to get after him there. And then lastly, you know, they can't abandon the run. And I know Pacheco had over 100 yards last game, but at the same time, they always do this. I think for the last, I don't even know how many years, but I mean, I've written articles on Arrowhead Addict talking about how they lose games because they get like too cute and abandon the run. And then, you know, that segued into this year where there's really nothing to be cute about with how the offense looks. And then you're not using the run to help set things up. You're just like, like it worked before, it'll come around. And then, you know, when the run's successful and you could, you know, use that to take pressure off of these younger, inexperienced receivers, they stop doing it. You know, and I made a note to talk about the Texans, you know, like for how successful Stroud has been and the Texans in general. The one thing I like is that they don't abandon the run. Like you'll look at their stat line and Pearson, Singletary will have 15 carries apiece and 30 yards total. But, you know, they're going to make sure they get 30 rushing attempts to help Stroud out.
Make you pay attention to, make you honor it.
Honest.
Yeah. Honor it.
Yeah. And so, you know, they cannot, in this game especially, they can't get away from that, because that's just going to snowball effect into these turnovers and in a moment when you need something to pop, you know, it's not going to be there because you abandon the run, and the defense is going to be prepared because they don't have to be honest about that. So, yeah.
I feel like this is, I could be, you know, prophetic in this, but this smells like a Andy Reid game where he sneaks off into running the ball predominantly to throw them off guard. He does at least once a year that he goes into a game where he's been throwing the ball over the yard all year, and then boom, he sneaks in and gives Pacheco and company, you know, 10 plus carries, you know, with 30 plus carries throughout the game, 150 yards down on the ground, and they win the game going away. So I got a feeling that this might be the prime time.
I mean, yeah.
Take that in,
I hope.
for them to come in and focus on the run game and catch the Bills off guard, catch them with their pants down, you know.
Well, and that's the way. Honestly, that's the way I feel like you'd have to play Buffalo. Is, I mean, how I say teams have to play KC. You kind of have to flip the script and play them the same way. But you got to have time of possession. You got to have, you know, I mean, almost by 10 plus minutes, you got to beat them in time of possession. Because then, assuming you're getting points out of your drives, then you're going to put Buffalo in a position at some point when they have to almost feel rushed to get something done. And then that's when you're going to see Josh Allen make these mistakes more prone to make them. Yeah. Yeah.
You're hilarious. I just want to say that.
You're muted, Rich.
That was funny.
Sorry, you're forcing you would effectively force Buffalo if you did that to force something where they have to take the risk.
Exactly.
They have to take the chance,
and that's
right?
what you'd want, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's to me the winning form. I mean, that's how teams have played KC. I mean, that's the way you got to beat good offenses and good teams. You got to just keep them off the field. Hope you get points out of every drive. You can't punt more than once or twice, and then you just got to make it to where there's this, whether false or true, sense of urgency that the other team feels and rushes something. Like I said, then there's your turnover and boom. So
now, the flip side of that, I have a question for you though, with regards to your previous comment on the last game. You're now missing two cornerstones in the back end of your defense. As you said, that the guys that make the adjustment, those are the guys that make, stir the drink back there, so to speak, right, for your team.
Yeah.
Captain's team, for example, has had some guys on his roster who have made some differences with the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
You have had multiple difference makers actually in your team over the last 2 years that have been added in short succession there as well. So you have to give credit as an opponent, whether you like to or not, where credit's due. So good for you. But with those two guys gone and going against a guy that, while he is turnover prone, if he's going against guys that are lackluster, can typically eat them alive. Because Josh Allen, for all of his faults, can throw an absolute laser.
Oh, I mean, he can swing it and he can run it. I mean, he's arguably their whole rushing attack, or they use him to open up running lanes for the running back. It's kind of a effed up thing. But yeah, I'm glad you talked about that because I did mean to bring up the injuries.
You're welcome.
Went over that. So yeah, you get out of here, man. I mean, that being said, so Tranquil is in concussion protocol. He didn't practice today, but I would imagine he makes it back unless it's a super bad concussion. But I would imagine he's back. On top of that, Nick Bolton was his activation window from the IR was last week. They just didn't bring him up for this last game. I haven't seen anything on whether he's back, but I mean, he was practicing today, so. You've got potential that he comes back, which is obviously a good thing.
That's huge for you.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the hope, I'd say, in Chiefs Kingdom, is obviously that Drew Tranquil is not anything, more than hopefully one game, because I mean, this defense is yet to see what it could be like with both those guys on the field. So we got that, and then Bolton coming back. You'd hope that's kind of the added kick in the rear, so to speak, to get the defense back on track.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it is a feast or famine defense, and Jordan Love was just able to carve them up when they blitzed. Which the last time they played Jordan Love was his first ever start, and he was not able to carve them up when they blitzed. So, hats off to him for improving. But yeah, obviously that losing the green dot linebackers huge. I would certainly impact the game, but I haven't seen anything to really make me sweat that one, if not both of those guys will play. Okay. That being said, Brian Cook, the safety, for how bad that injury looked, actually had a pretty good outlook. I don't know if you saw that. His ankle was looked like it was like a deli meat getting snapped in half. But then went and had an X-ray and it was all negative. So I was like, "What the hell is this guy's ankle made out of?" That guy's what they put in Wolverine? Adamantium.
Yeah,
he's made out of that, dude. Because I was like, "There's no way." I was like, "That has to be a bad X-ray. Run that again," because that dude.
Yeah, but Trevor Lawrence looked bad too, and he only got high ankle sprain, so
exactly.
he looked out too.
But Cook didn't practice today, and I imagine would be out. But he wasn't necessarily a starting safety. I mean, he's kind of a package guy, so not the biggest of loss. But obviously, as evidence in the Packers game, some of the more backup or inexperienced guys out there opened up the door for some carvings to occur. So
yeah.
And that was a Jordan Love. I would imagine Josh Allen would be able to do that at a little bit easier pace. But yeah, haven't really seen anything to make me overly sweat that component's not going to be there. And I'd say the catch-22 is they're without Von Miller and Matt Milano at least. So, they're losing. They don't have – and Tre'Davious White. So they don't have some key components on their defense, which is part of why they're 6-6. So,
yeah,
but yeah, like I said, this is the kind of the make or break game because I feel if they win this game, I think they've got a pretty good shot. I think pretty good shot of being the number 1 seed. Pretty good shot of, keeping the playoffs through Arrowhead. And I'd say pretty good shot to get right and go back to the Super Bowl. If they lose this game, I think they're still making the playoffs, but I think you're definitely more keen to, they won't be number 1 seed and definitely more keen to a first round loss, which partially I kind of hope for, because then they'll have to look in the mirror and be like, maybe we should have spent some money on wide receiver.
I think they realize that regardless. Though. I think they know that. Yeah, I think they know that period.
It's wild because I don't know if you've seen the wide receiver coach is an inexperienced. I think I have just about as much qualification as he does, and he's young. And I'm like, what are you doing?
And you're an O-lineman.
I'm like, what are we doing with the most inexperienced group, and you gave him the most inexperienced guy, and you're like, we got Patrick. We'll figure it out.
They're gonna grow together.
Yeah, that's what they keep saying. Literally, Reed's coach, his Kool-Aid talk is they continue to get better every day. First of all, you're paying these guys millions of dollars. I don't know. I make a fraction of that. You think if I told my boss, hey, you know what the most important thing is? I'm getting better every day. You think yeah. Why wasn't this filed? Hey, don't worry about it.
Get better in the unemployment line, buddy.
Had a good
better every day.
Had a good week of practice. Had a great week of practice.
Yeah. Hey, we'll see you. It's Wednesday. Yeah. Great weeks of practice, guys.
So I think that's a good full recap of everything, all things Chiefs, at least for both weeks.
Yeah. And it wasn't a smug. Like I said, I got humility now.
Yeah.
Until they win.
1 week. For 1 week.
Enjoy it, Cat. Enjoy it.
I am. It's fantastic. That's why I said it's always great with the Smugs. Ooh.
I was hoping Sarah would be in here because I'd be like, well, that game, Green Bay or Chiefs lost it more than Green Bay won it.
Mike Sarah he's living vicariously through me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Captain, I want to throw over to you to get Raiders' take finally. Since
wait a second.
I went running.
We got a couple things that we got to catch up on. First off, the Chosen Rosen was on an NFL team in 2023, technically, because he was
49ers.
He was released from the Vikings on January 15th of this year. So I'm saying this year, the technicality.
Yeah.
Well, so even the Vikings didn't pick him up, or they didn't say when they needed a quarterback, and they had him as a player this past year.
That's how you know he's bad.
That's how you know he's bad. But he is listed in the great Wikipedia thing of Jewish football players, and that's great as it is. I did look it up. Adamantium is not as strong as vibranium. I just wanted to make sure. Vibranium is stronger than adamantium for all those that were wondering.
Strongest metal on Earth.
That's
in
right.
Marvel Land.
You can find it in Wakanda.
Yes.
Wakanda forever. Yeah, not to be confused with Fromunda.
Fromunda the toilet?
No.
I'm going to need a key on that one.
Fromunda
cheese?
Yeah, Fromunda my balls. Anyway, I had to go somewhere because remember, we ended last week with the blue pills, baby, and I had to bring something to the but yeah, go to we're on me again. I will say the Raiders, because this is the segue. This was my segue because Rosen was on the Vikings. And who the Raiders play this next Sunday is the Vikings. And this is one of those make or break games for both franchises. Okay. The Vikings have their aspirations of being one of those playoff teams for the NFC.
Yeah.
The AFC is more wide open this year. And it's one of those things where just like, we're playing better each week. Well, yeah, you can say that, but with a Raiders staff where everybody is pretty much on a look what you can do for the team, not just this year, but next year. I think the only person that definitely needs to make golf plans for mid-January and had his office cleaned out immediately is Dante Brasili, the offensive line coach. That bastard is so gone that I think at the end of the game, barring anything unforeseen like the Raiders making the playoffs. No, I don't see that happening. But I had to throw that in there. But just in the off chance that, like I said, that game is flexed, the very last game, and it was flexed the year we played the Garglers. There you go, Coach. I had to throw it in there at least once. The year we played the Garglers, it was flexed because that was the game that the winner went to the playoffs. So the last game might be flexed because it might be that important for the Raiders and Broncos. I don't think it's going to be flexed. I really think that that the Raiders are going to win a few of these games upcoming. But just like Coach, I want them to play well. I want them to play for Antonio Pierce. But I don't want too many more victories because what was it, 11 and 12 was the draft order? You guys were 11 and we were 12, or is that flip flop?
Let me see. Tankathon.com. Let's see.
Thank you. There's
right now, currently, y'all 11, we 12. Yep.
Oh, so we're actually 11 now.
Yep.
There you go. Yeah. Anything that's above so we're last in the AFC then.
Technically.
Yeah, okay. I believe so. Yeah.
There you go. But again,
I can think about virtue of head-to-head matchups. I think that's the only reason why y'all had.
That's wild.
Yep.
Yeah.
By virtue of us winning the earlier matchup is the reason why y'all above us, I think.
Right. And I firmly think that the Raiders are going to beat them on the Thursday. And then we might have to flip flop that because I think the Raiders are.
If I had it my way, I want to be higher than 12.
Exactly. And as I was saying, it's just out of the people that can get these quarterbacks. Bullshit. All you got to do is dangle Devontae Adams. Okay. And I think that's going to happen too. They're going to dangle Devontae Adams for that contract, and get rid of the big contract. And they're going to, build a little bit of a younger team. They might trade up for a quarterback that's maybe not they're not going to get the number one quarterback. They're not going to get the number two quarterback, but they'll be in the race for the number three.
Well, by my numbers, there are 8 are coming out. They all could be good. So you got to pick between 8 quarterbacks.
Kat, did you see the article? I think it was Sports Illustrated. Talked about
Was it an AI article, or was it real?
It was about McDaniels and Ziegler and their relationship and.
Yes,
we
could have had Stroud.
That's what I wanted to ask.
It
sounded like they were ready to go to do it, but McDaniels didn't want to. And I'm curious, I guess, what do you think that package was? What do you think that offer was to move up to 2? Or where were they at? 4 or 5? I guess probably not.
We were at 7.
It probably wasn't met.
We were at 7. And it was. I don't know. I'm just saying that obviously. And I don't denigrate on McFired because the guy is he's worthless, and I'm not gonna, denigrate him any further than he was a worthless piece of shit. So I call him McWorthless. McFired.
McFired, McWorthless. I love it.
That's it. You don't have to say anything else. But Stroud. But here's the thing, though. If you put Stroud on the Raiders this year, he's not as
Who
good.
knows? Yeah.
He's not as good.
I mean, especially with McDaniels. Like,
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah.
Like, that guy would have ruined them.
Right. So that's why I'm saying this is the year that the Raiders get a real offensive coordinator, be that who it may, start from jump, scrap all the crap, and find the players that are going to be able to play in that system. Like you said, Dante Brasili and those offensive linemen are going to they're going to figure out the linemen that they need. They're going to need some big old bubbas, okay? It's not as much of the Brasili as like the guy that likes to throw guys, they're decent size that they can move. No, these are going to be friggin', mountains, and go back to that sort of offensive line scheme. I'm pretty sure. But back to reality here. Captain will be out there for a week, starting in this Saturday and leaving late on the red eye on Friday. So a full week in Vegas. And I'll touch back in Tampa on about 9 a.m. on Saturday.
Hide your kids, hide your wives.
That's right. Hey, and this is, the most that I'm looking forward to this week is going and getting an Uber and going to Genghis Grill, because we used to have them here. It's the Mongolian place.
Yeah.
They don't have them here in Florida anymore. They got them in Henderson. I saw that. I'm like, ooh, I got a Genghis Grill. I just salivating.
Not a fan of those spots, man.
Yeah, but you know what? When you haven't had something
like Hoo Ha, you guys got Hoo Ha?
No, haven't had a Hoo Ha. I've seen some Hoo Ha's, but never mind. I'm not even going to go there.
Now we're getting on to meat fluffing territory here.
There's the rail. We're going off it.
Yep, there it is. Some Hoo Ha's. There you go. Anyway. But now I definitely lost my train of thought, man. But that train was derailed.
Week 14. Yeah. Week 14.
It was going off the track anyway.
Yeah. But like I said, this is a very important game for the Raiders to play as a group. Again, these are all just auditions for next year. Figuratively, can the Raiders make the playoffs? Sure. Do I really want them to make the playoffs with this fractured team with really nothing to play for other than pride? No, I'd like for this, just like Coach said, I want to see them play well. I want to see them with that camaraderie. I want to see them play for each other, but not necessarily. And I hate saying it, just play well, baby. Don't have to get the W. Tactfully tanking. There you go. Thank you. But here you go, because there's a lot of people out there. And by the way, we will not be getting Marvin Harrison Jr. You'd have to trade up into the top 3 for that. And I think the Bears might take him with that second pick, because the Bears got 1 and 4.
They might end up with 1 and 2.
They might.
Yeah. Right now, I think it's 1 and 4. But yeah, they're going to
1 and 4.
Thank you there, sir. So yeah, I actually do some research before the game is played. But play well, have a good outing, and just what I do want to see is that they are continuing to ascend as a team to see who wants to play. And as stated, give me Antonio Pierce, give me Champ Kelly, take the interim tags off them, let them do their work. And get a real offensive coordinator. And by the way, I know the defense has been playing well, aside from Graham bitching out against the Chiefs, because he played a better offensive scheme against a better offensive team, kept them to 20 points, and kind of punked out against the Chiefs, was like a little bitch. If that guy isn't your defensive coordinator,
that's how you really feel.
Right.
Yeah. But, if he's not the guy, then there are guys that might be available, That's why I said don't get hammered in on, well, he's here on staff. Well, get the best guy available that wants to come to Vegas and play and coach for the Shield. And that's what I'm saying. And if it's good for the team, it's good for the team. And again, I foresee an entertaining close game as the Raider games have been for the last couple times they played. I mean, even the 14 points that the Chiefs threw up on them at the end, that really wasn't, it was kind of like rough shot at the end. They weren't as it was closer than the score appeared. It really was. But I want to see a good game. The Raiders are historically pissy, just god friggin' awful after a bye. They just historically they just suck after a bye. I want to see if they can throw that to the wayside, because they got the bye, they got the game, and then they got a short week to play. I'm only going to do it once. The LA team. See, I caught myself. I didn't say it twice. Play the LA team on Thursday, so I want to see again a coordinated team, because then they're off until Christmas after that game against that LA team. So let's see what we got here. And again, I will be entertaining. I won't be at that game as of now. I don't have any plans. There was somebody that had a conniption, high and right, when I mentioned the fact that my friend was going to say, give me a ticket to the game in Kansas City and pick me up at the airport and let me stay at their house. And all that wonderful thing, and all it would cost would be a plane trip out there. And I was looking at it, and somebody I know, and I won't mention any names, just went high and right like a Philippine missile. Okay, what the? You mean you're not going to be here for Christmas? I'm like, yeah, I guess that those plans went right out the friggin' window, but. Anyway, I'll be entertaining people on Christmas as well as the week after.
Anybody domesticated know what Cap's talking about, I'm sure.
Yeah. So we have a divisional matchup coming up this week, Coach.
That we do.
And just to kind of put a pin in the Vikings game for the Raiders, my prediction there is the Vikings are a tough team, generally speaking. They seem to have. They seem to do well against the AFC West, generally speaking, and put up, hard-fought games. I think that because the Raiders have kind of gone up and down the last little bit, I do think that despite the Vikings' issues, I do think the Vikings win.
And Josh Dobbs
it depends which Dobbs shows up.
Yeah. Has the magic run out or not?
Intercepts or not?
Interception or not? That's funny.
Yeah, so I do think that the Vikings are going to kind of pull that one out and beat the Raiders.
I didn't say it. I heard it. I didn't say it. I didn't jump on it.
Is Justin Jefferson coming back?
Yes, he is playing. He is playing. Yes, he is playing.
He is playing. Yeah.
Jetta.
Hey, Jetta.
So moving on to the Chargers Broncos game. I originally thought at the beginning of the year that the Chargers and Broncos were going to be slugfest between the two teams, to be perfectly honest. I really did. I did think that the Chargers offensive line, I mean, from what I saw last year, I thought that they were playing really, really well, and I kind of expected quite a bit.
Yeah. When you lose your center, man, I'm telling you, it's an underrated fact.
Yeah. Well, that and Zion kind of took a step back.
That he did.
And so we're not seeing the rest of the line kind of fill the void left by what is clearly the cog. Like the cog in that. Yeah.
Full stop right there.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's an unfortunate piece. And the Chargers just haven't shown out like they typically do in games. And so, it's going to be very interesting to see how the two teams play each other. I'm also curious to see how careful the Chargers are going to be with the ball. Because what version is going to show up effectively is what I'm trying to get at here.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, it's what version of the team. Is the team going to say, oh, that's the division rival, and actually elevate?
Give a damn? Yeah.
Or is it going to be a little bit more of the same from what we've seen this season from the Chargers, where it's a reasonably looking offense, but ultimately doesn't get the job done? And which version of the Broncos defense are we going to see now that we've seen some challenges reemerge on the defensive side of the ball in terms of sloppy tackling, discipline challenges again, and my several folks that I like to kind of point out. We saw Simmons get beat a bunch of times in the back end of the field where he was trying to chase down the ball, missed his guy, et cetera, et cetera. I think Herbert, because he does have such a good arm and he really is quite the pick for you guys as a quarterback, if you're going to be perfectly blunt. He has shown massive progression from where he was coming out of college, and all the credit in the world for the progression that he has made. He can't do it all himself.
That's a fact.
So, he has the ability to slice and carve up secondaries. The question is whether or not your line is going to give him the time.
Does he have the tools to do it?
Yeah, exactly.
Time and the ability to trust the fact that the guy's going to catch the ball on the other end.
Someone not named Keenan to do it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And sorry, Alex, that's another piece in the Broncos Chargers matchup is the Broncos have a tendency to actually knock Allen out of the game. In a lot of Broncos games, Keenan Allen often gets hurt.
We're going to wish that on the man? Jesus, I'm not going to wood.
I'm not going to wish that on anyone. I'm just simply calling it a spade, a duck,
You got to call out the propensity if it's there.
The fact is what it is, right? It's not like I'm wishing that on anyone. It's just it is what it is. And he has had a tendency to get hurt when he plays the Broncos, and it's likely because it's a tough divisional game, and the Broncos have traditionally fielded relatively solid defenses for years now.
Yeah, despite the fact that, we're not going to, wish injury on the man, but even so, I think that he's going to still have a rougher time or more of a challenging go at it, because he's going to face a guy by the name of Patrick Surtain, and he's one of those corners that is rare in the fact that he travels with his yeah, but if he does play, he's going to likely travel with Keenan and most of them. So he's going to match up with him predominantly throughout the game. So that's going to be a challenge in itself. Now, hopefully and prayerfully that Josh Palmer comes back. They activated his 21-day window to come back off IR, so he's been practicing. So if he comes and plays, that'll give us another pass option that Herbert, quote unquote, trusts. More of a possession guy on the outside, which will allow for things to open up for Everett and things of that nature. But yet again,
Dillon and Moreau, though, are both very good corners and should not be, shoved aside, though, in terms of coverage either. The one thing I have to give credit to Vance Joseph and the staff, like I've said a few pods ago, was they have made some tremendous decisions in benching guys that were not up to par.
That 70-point game woke a lot of people up, and they righted the ship from that point. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah,
I definitely agree with that. And kudos to Vance Joseph for being aware, have self-awareness, and realize that he needed to make some changes because that was an embarrassment. So I definitely agree with that. Just matchup overall, I think for us, and I think the biggest thing we can kind of watch and really play, microscopic contention to is the fact that I think that if they come into this game and want to play it as a pride game because it's a divisional rivalry, then you kind of get the idea that the team isn't completely lost. And Brandon Staley hadn't completely lost the team. But if they come in and lay an egg, or they kind of play like uninspired, like they kind of did with the Patriots, then you can really tell you the writing's on the wall that Brandon Staley has lost the locker room, and it is over for him and his staff. I think that's where it really will come down to. If it's a tough game, if it's a competitive game, that it's a prideful game for the players. If they do not play at all, they come in uninspired and they just kind of going through the motions, that they're just done with Brandon Staley and they're just ready for the season to be over, in all honesty.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other piece that you may see is if the Broncos defense plays differently than they did, say, against the Texans, and comes out playing more like they did against, say, the Browns versus the Chargers there, what you might see is tremendous effort in the first, say, quarter. But then if the Broncos kind of smother the offensive attempts of the Chargers and start sacking and hitting Herbert, you may just see just the morale alone.
Very possible.
And that's not necessarily a Staley thing per se, although it's partially a Staley thing.
I think that's part of it. That's part of it.
But my point is that having the air taken out of you isn't necessarily exclusively on the head coach, right? Is my point. As a team, it's can the coach make adjustments to then bring morale back into the locker room that I put on the head coach? Like, the players have to ultimately play. And so if the players come out and get beat, that's not necessarily on the head coach per se, is my point.
Well, I mean, you can have a premeditated motive in this regard. You can come out and say that we don't want to play for this coach anymore, and we want to make sure that he's, send packing at the end of the season. So you already have a predetermined mindset of how you want to address the game. Yeah. So that part is really what I'm driving at. But overall, and what bothers me too about this game is the fact that it's clear and cut at this moment in time that the Chargers are one-dimensional. Like, they can't run the ball, and they don't get into what Alex's point earlier, keep you honest and make you think about it and make you honestly address it and make you feel like it's an option for you throughout the game. So they know that they can just pin their ears back and come after the quarterback in all facets. That makes it easier for the coordinator to game plan.
I think that's true. The one thing that the Broncos have as a weakness that may work in your favor in that regard, though, is our run defense typically has not been great.
Well, that's the thing. Good defense, run defense, bad defenses, we can't run the ball.
That's not it.
We just can't run the ball. It doesn't matter what the level of play is or what the competition is on the other side of the ball. We just can't seem to run the ball in a consistent clip. We just can't seem to do it. Interesting.
Okay. So, I mean, that'll be an interesting point for me to watch very closely then in the game is if you have struggled in the run game, is that going to be something that the Broncos make you look better at because of our struggles in the run defense side of the game? And that could be interesting. Now, without the center, without, adjustments of protections, etc., maybe that's just not going to happen anyways, even if I think it might. Fair enough. But we'll see what happens, right?
Yep, we'll see what happens.
Is there anything that you think might be a saving grace other than Palmer?
That's pretty much it. I mean, everybody's that isn't on IR is pretty much healthy at this point. Activated JT Woods off IR as well, and he's been practicing. So I'd like to see him get some reps to see what he can do. Third round pick from last year, so I'm hoping that he can get some reps and try to help with the secondary out. But outside of that, just try to be better from an effort perspective on defense. That's really all I really want to see. I think it is what it is at this point with offense. Like I said, it's one-dimensional. If we do get our receiver back, it should help us move the ball somewhat better. But overall, I mean, it's rough going into the game when you know that you only do one thing decent, and you can't keep the defense on their heels and keep them honest. So that's something really think that's only really worrying me. And the fact that, again, going back to our defense and talk about going to get your offense is that, we've been susceptible to the run and we were dead last in the past. So, that's an issue too. So if we can improve on that in any regard, then that'll be a plus. You just look, for me, I'm just really looking at it from a developmental standpoint. Like the guys that we're going to retain, get them reps and see what we can build on. And, I talked about Thule earlier, Khalil, and some few other guys. So just, kind of highlight them and see, what you have in them going forward and what you can build around for the future. That's really all I'm looking at.
I think that's fair. The one player I do think, because Sean Payton is that guy. We talked about the Ravens showcasing Flowers as a, looky what I got kind of thing. I'm going to make a prediction in this game that the Chargers are going to see a tremendous amount of Jaleel McLaughlin.
And I hope not, because I got Javonte on my fantasy team. But go ahead, though.
So I'm sorry for you because of that. But in my opinion, I think you're going to see McLaughlin coming out in a big way in this game. And the reason why I think that is Eckler is very McLaughlin-esque in terms of what he's tried to, put himself out there as, right? And that's funny. And so, in my opinion, I think Sean Payton is going to try to showcase the fact that he's got the better guy.
He's got the McLaughlin.
Right? So I got McLaughlin, you got Eckler. I bet you I can get McLaughlin to look better than Eckler on the field.
Hey, well,
And
have a blast. Have a blast.
Yeah. So I truly think that's what we'll probably see, in my opinion, is
Javonte hasn't scored a rushing touchdown yet either, which is really irritating.
He caught a couple out of the backfield. You're gonna get a couple of passing ones. We don't have a rushing one. So why not? Why not this game? Give me about 15, 20 points of fantasy. I'm good with that.
The other thing I think the problem with Javonte is that they flagged him, and I think that's actually kind of impacted his running style. He got a flag for like Jacobs did for.
Did he get a fine? Did he get a fine too?
He got fined as well.
Okay, yeah, gotcha.
And so basically, Williams is that old school kind of like Marshawn Lynch. I just want to run.
Well, yeah, he used to be a linebacker, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And
so
he got that mindset. Yeah,
that explains a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and so his problem is that I think he got that fine and that penalty, and he's like, well, now they're out to get me because I won all the angry runs titles, and so he just doesn't want, to get those fines again, right? So I do have the Broncos winning this game.
So do I.
I do think because it's a divisional game that this has the potential of, if the Broncos don't get a bunch of turnovers and kind of come back down to earth where I think they're going to be, I think this is kind of one of those, 24-17 kind of games, just because I think that it's a divisional game and we both know each other very well. However, if the Denver Broncos defense reverts back to our turnover ways, if you will, I do think that there is the potential that this game can, in fact, get out of hand.
Ironically, the Chargers are favored by 3 points, which is funny to me, but we'll see. I'm hoping for a tactfully tanking outing from my perspective, so we'll see.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good show for tonight and good point to leave it on for the show. We got the Lightning Fast Fantasy Podcast coming right after this for your viewing pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to cover a recap on next Wednesday of all of the games that we've just previewed for you in the podcast here. And until next week, where the West Side is the best side. Peace.
Yeah! Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east.